Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatyadeshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasavi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Shri Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So today we'll be covering the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, one of the most practical and easiest chapters to understand, which is entitled the three modes of material nature. So in the other chapters that we have so far discussed, we had a very technical, abstract chapter last time regarding the three, the detail of the Kshetrajna, and the various knowers and knowledges of objects in regards to the body and material nature. And it was very technical, very abstract. But it led to us to having the conclusion that to really develop knowledge, devotional service is really necessary. And so in this as well, in this chapter, we now discuss more on the practicality of what we studied last time and the importance of fully understanding it. So without further ado, let's get into that. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudhirayet Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama-shloke Bhaktir-bhavati naishtuki. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, the 13th chapter, we discussed a very important point near the end of the 13th chapter to do with the level of understanding that someone has and how one can apply it. And it's the idea that although the living entity thinks that they're an enjoyer, they're actually part of the energy of the Lord. They are not Purusha, but they are Prakriti. And so in the 13th chapter, verse 22, this verse is there, which is what connects the 13th and 14th chapter. It's the expansion of this verse which leads to the 14th chapter. 13:22 Purushah prakritisto hi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sadasadyoni janmashu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. So where we described in the 13th chapter the different field of activity, the body as the field of activity, and how we can use our field. We're limited in capacity. I can do what my body can do. My mum can do what her body can do. My sister can do what her body can do. We're not the same body. We are confined, we are constricted, or we are, in a sense, different as well in terms of our body. And so different bodies have different modes of nature, and different living entities are given different bodies depending on the modes that they associate with. So the body acts as a means of connection between the soul and the material nature, because the soul is spiritual. So in order to interact with the material elements around it, it requires a body. And so it requires a body in order to interact with the other various elements. The verse has said, thus he meets with good and evil among various species. Now, understanding why we get those various bodies and understanding why we stick to various modes of nature is very important to understand. Prakriti, bhunkte prakriti jan gunan. Gunan means the modes of nature. Karanam guna sangosya. So the cause is to do the association of those modes. Sat asat yoni janmashu. So you get good and bad species of life due to that. And then to elaborate on these various bodies, these various modes that we associate with, this next chapter has started. So Lord Krishna starts up the next chapter. And it's a really nice, sweet chapter, this one, because it explains really practically what we can see in our life, and then how we can analyze and utilize it in terms of this means of understanding in order to improve ourselves and our devotional service. So the Lord starts off this chapter from verses 1 to 13 is to do with the conditioning of various species. The Lord starts off this chapter explaining this knowledge. He says, Param bhuya pravakshyami jnananam jnanamuttamam yajñatva munaya sarve param siddhim mito gata. Again, I shall declare to you the supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all sages have attained supreme perfection. And so he starts off this chapter with he stated what he's going to go with, and this is to do with the modes, and that the knowledge of understanding these will lead us to the supreme perfection, which is beyond liberation as well. So it's a very interesting thing this understanding why we have come to this world, why we have become conditioned, and how we can also undo that conditioning and even in this world become happy. There's a story that I remember hearing that there was one time a person in New York City. He had to commute across the city, and of course, you don't generally own cars because it's too expensive to have the whole space for parking them and whatnot. So you just take a cab. So he booked his Uber, and he's going to get in the car. He says, "Oh, please take me to this destination." He shows the taxi driver. Taxi driver says, "Yeah, sure." And so he's sitting in the back of the car, and the taxi driver is going, and he's going through the more traffic, the more congested area of the road. And so the person sitting behind knows, actually, there's an easier way of going. I think I'll tell him the easier way of how I can get there. And so the person who's there, he taps the taxi driver on the shoulder, and the taxi driver freaks out completely. He gets completely lost. He's like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" He almost hits another car. He keeps on going, and at some point he calms down, parks the car, and takes a little breath. And the other guy sitting at the back's thinking, "Why such a vigorous reaction? It was just a tap on the shoulder." And so then the taxi driver explained, "I used to drive funeral cars, and so to get a tap on the shoulder, it completely scared me." So this is the nature of conditioning. This is the nature of conditioning. That he's been used to driving the car with the dead bodies, the caskets. And so, of course, if you're driving a car with a dead body and then you feel a tap on the shoulder, you're going to think, who's in that car? So he becomes very scared in this manner. So this is the nature of the conditioning. Another story is there that in the river Godavari, it is said that you find many diamonds there. And so a person goes there and they think, okay, look, I'm going to get diamonds today. I'm going to spend several hours. If I can't get it, then I'll come back tomorrow. So they go, and they're like, "Oh, there's so many stones here. How am I going to know which one's diamond? How am I going to get the diamond stone?" So to do that, what's my best plan? So they go and they come up with a plan, which is, I'll get a stone. If it's not diamond, I'll just throw it away. And so they do like this. They keep on getting, I'll throw it further away into the ocean. Okay, this one's not. This one's not. And they keep on doing like that. And then accidentally, once when they pick up the diamond, they're just so used to that motion that they end up throwing the diamond as well, because they're just so used to throwing the stone away. And so this is the nature of the conditioning. So what we've gone through is we've gone through so many lifetimes where we have been able to just enjoy, gratify our senses materially, so not really gratifying them even. And we've been able to go through so many lifetimes like that. But we're now in that constant repetitive motion. It's like Newton's first law. Anyone who does physics, they know that. An object in motion stays in motion unless acted on by an external resultant force. And so it's that principle there as well, that we're going in this same conditioning over and over again. I was writing my notes today, and instead of writing funeral director, I ended up writing further maths by accident, just because of my conditioning. My conditionings, I'm always thinking about my further maths revision and how I can do that one. And so that's the nature of our conditioning. We just naturally we get into a habit and we stick to it. And so this is really explained really clearly in the first 13 verses of this chapter. What is conditioning, how we can undo this conditioning, and what is the bad and good things about conditioning and good things about undoing it. Okay, so now in the second verse, the Lord says, Idam dhyanam upashitra mama sadarmyamagata sarge pino pajayante pralayena vyatantita. By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain my transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. So the Lord clearly sets himself apart here, because there's material nature, all that's going on around us materially, what we can see in Kali Yuga, all these depressing things that are happening right now, for example, with the COVID pandemic. All these things around us, these are controlled by the modes of material nature, but the Lord is beyond that. And when we rise to the platform, we also, in a sense, become qualitatively one with the Lord, because we are fully able to experience that qualitative equality. Although the individuality is different, that's a little more technical. The individuality is different. We carry on serving because it's our nature to serve, but we in a sense, qualitatively, we reach that equality with the Lord. And the Lord is beyond the modes of nature. That's very clearly emphasized there. And then the third verse is a very famous verse. Anyone who wants to memorize any verse, I recommend that you learn this one. Mama yonirmahad brahma tasmin garbam dadamyaham sambhavah sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it's that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the birth of all living entities, O son of Bharata. So we often hear this concept of Brahman. This is like one of the most fundamental ideas, or like especially when we're at the first stage of devotion before we can progress in any transcendental spirituality or anything. It's always important that we understand that. And so it's basically that the material substance, the Lord, by looking at it, he impregnates it. That's how the living entity comes into this material world. And it's this Brahman which we see around us, the impersonal Brahma Jyoti around us, which is one of the representations of the Lord in his impersonal form. And it's very important that we don't realize that. For example, it's given the scorpion lays its eggs in piles of rice, which is actually sometimes quite a scary thing, because you're there with your rice and then you look in the rice and all of a sudden there's a scorpion egg in there and a scorpion is there. So it becomes very scary for certain people in the villages, of course. Well, I've not experienced this myself, but I've heard from others about what it's like. And so the scorpion lays its eggs in the rice. And now that means that when the scorpion breaks out of its egg, it comes up through the rice. Now, that doesn't mean the rice has given birth to the scorpion. The rice is not the cause of the scorpion. It's the place where the eggs were laid. So in the same way, the material nature is not the cause of the birth of the living entities, but actually the seed is given by the Lord himself. So in that way, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govindam Sarva Karana Karanam. He's the cause of all causes, the original cause, the first cause. And so this is very clearly emphasized that the Lord is the source of the impregnation of the Mahatma. And then on the topic of Father's Day, we come to the fourth verse, which is also a very noteworthy verse. Sarvayonishu kaunteya murtaya sambhavantyah tasam brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradapita. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. Often when it's Father's Day, devotees always refer back to this verse, aham bija pradapita, because we have to respect our Father. It's our nature and it's what we should do. But our Supreme Father is the Lord, because we have had so many fathers and mothers in various births. But the unchanged eternal Father of all of us is the seed-giving Father, which is Lord Krishna, who gives the seed. How does he give the seed? There's a whole technicality there and how Lord Shiva is involved and all of this stuff. But the ultimate seed-giving Father is Lord Krishna. And the other thing is, it's very important from this verse, all species of life, ranging from Lord Brahma, that in the uppermost planetary system, all the way down to the lower planets, all species of life, the Lord is the seed-giving Father. So this is another argument for Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Those we've mentioned many times this phrase that the whole world is like one family. People, the people who are narrow-minded in consciousness, they always say, "This is mine, that is yours. This is mine, that is yours." For those who are open-minded, they will see the world as one family. This is another way you can see the world as one family. One reason you can see, because the Paramatma is there in the heart of everyone. And the other way you can see is that the Lord is the Supreme Father. And so therefore, we're all the children of the Lord, no matter who we are. So that's really, really important. The Lord himself is the seed-giving Father. So on this Father's Day, and every day anyway, we should always remember this fact. We are coming from the Lord only. So then in the fifth verse, it gives a little brief summary of the various modes of nature. And this is what we get into in this chapter. The fifth verse is, we talk about these things called guna. Guna in Sanskrit means a mode, or in this case, it's the modes of material nature. But it literally means as well the rope. Ropes, what the ropes can do is they can bind us. In the same way that Yashoda, when she wanted to tie Lord Krishna, she used the rope. Of course, that's a different whole pastime in itself. But the ropes, they can bind us. And so these gunas, what they do is like ropes, they also bind us in this material existence. They connect us, they get us into the cycle of birth and death, of samsara, punarapi jananam, puranapi maranam, punarapi janani jatare shainam. Taking birth, dying, and then going into the womb of another mother again. And how do you get out? Iha samsare, kaludustare, kripayapare, pari murare. Taking the shelter of Murari, you can get out of this. And so these are the modes of material nature. This is what they do. And there's three modes mentioned. The first one, the purest of them all, is sattva, or goodness. And that's the first and the topmost out of these three modes of material nature. And the second one, the middle one, is called rajas, or raja. And that is the passion, the mode of passion. And finally, we have the mode of ignorance, which is tama or tamas. And that is the lowest mode of material nature. So these are three modes: sattva, raja, and tamas. Goodness, passion, and ignorance. And when a living entity comes into contact by nature, he becomes conditioned by these three modes. So the fifth verse summarizes that, and it leads us into these are three broad categories, actually. There's various levels of modes of nature. Someone may be more in passion than someone else. Someone may be closer to goodness, a mixed goodness and passion, various things. These are not fixed, discrete concepts, but they're a bit more arbitrary than that. And so it's these modes which interact to cause our various happinesses and distresses. Okay, and the sixth verse tells us about the goodness. Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat. Nirmalatvat means it's the purest one in the material world. And so this mode of goodness being purer than the others, what does it do? Prakashakam anamayam. No sinful reaction. Sukha sangena badnati. It makes you happy. By being in this mode, you become happy. And jnana sangena chanaga. You also become very knowledgeable. So the mode of goodness leads to happiness and knowledge. That's what the mode of goodness does. And it's no sin is there. So it's very pure. Then after that, we have the mode of passion. Rajo ragatmakam vidhi trishna sanna samudbhavam. Trishna sanga samudbhavam, sorry. It's born of the unlimited desires. So Raja, literally, the mode of passion is characterized between the attraction between the male and the female. This is the Rajas, there's a passion. There's so many activities going on, so many desires which are happening. And to fulfill those desires, simply put, there's loads of actions which we have to take. And so that's what the Rajas is important for. And then after the Rajas, we have the Tamas, the Tamoguna, the mode of ignorance. And what's that conditioned with? Oh, sorry, the Rajas is it's unlimited desires and longings. So we never become happy in the mode of passion. And finally, in the mode of ignorance, then we have to, we're filled with delusion. Tamastagnyana jamvidi. Ajnana means literally ignorance. So it's the opposite of knowledge. When we have knowledge, we are working properly. But when we don't have knowledge, then we aren't able to work properly. And that is basically ignorance. So the result of being in that sort of mode is the description. Pramadhalasya nidrabis tanni badnati bharata. Sorry. Madness, laziness or indolence, nidra, sleep. Madness, we become mad, lazy, and we sleep a lot. And so in this way, it conditions the soul. Now, the one question may come, how does goodness condition the soul? Because it seems that is very pure as a state. And the reason it conditions us is we become so happy with the knowledge we have that we actually get a little bit of pride in our heart. We think, I know this person does not know this. I know this person does not know this. And that's why it's conditioning, but it's not as conditioning as the other ones. It's not as bad. And so that's the best one that we have to come at least to that stage. So the summary is given in the 9th verse. O son of Bharata, I'll just read the verse. Sattvam sukhe sanjayati, rajak karmani bharata, jnanam avrityatu tamaha, pramade sanjayatyuta. Sorry, rajak karmani bharata. O son of Bharata, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness, passion conditions one to fruitive activities, and ignorance covers one knowledge and binds one to madness. We become mad with that. So it's those simple broad categories that are given. So now we can see when we're like, at different times of the day, we can see, in the tide, I'm a lot more, in the night, I'm a lot more tired, a little more lazier. That's because the ignorance is there, more dominant. In the morning, I'm more active and more fresh and more ready to do. So that time, the goodness is more prominent. In the middle, I'm working really hard. It's I'm a little bit maybe sweating a lot because of the weather these days, these sort of things. That's why passion is coming in. So we can see now the various divisions. And it's very clearly mentioned that these are not discrete, separate. One is not situated fundamentally in goodness at one point or fundamentally in ignorance, but rather it's a mixture of the modes at different varying quantities at varying times. And so the 10th verse gives that description that there is always a competition between them in a sense of who can take control. But the overall understanding is that when one understands the science of Krishna consciousness, they are able to quickly pass this. Then it's just further explained in verses 11, 12, and 13 what these symptoms are. So it's really simple. With we'll just read the verses and translations. Sorry, we'll just read the translations, make it easier. Manifestation of the mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of body are illuminated by knowledge. So this is the knowledge is there in the mode of goodness. So you become very cleansed inside and outside, and that's why there's so much happiness that's there. In passion, verse 12, O chief of Bharatas, when there's an increase in passion, the great symptoms of attachment and fruitive activity, and intense endeavor, uncontrollable desire, and hankering development. And so in passion, a lot they work. It's not like goodness people don't work, but it's in passion that they work so much because they think, if I work, I'll become happy. If I get this, then I'll become happy. Actually, they don't. So it just leads to more hard work, which leads to more hard work, and it just keeps on going like that. There's no real satisfaction. And then finally, in the mode of ignorance, O son of Guru, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion are manifested. So this is the ignorance mode is full of laziness, like inertia. You don't want to work, you don't want to do anything. Just lazy, mad, deluded, dark. In the darkness, in the sense that there's no illumination of knowledge, for example. It's completely full of illusion there. So that's the mode of ignorance by its nature. So those are the various modes that are given, and the various conditionings that they do. And it's important that we can't blame Krishna now. Why are we here now in this place? Because we've brought ourselves here by our own actions. We can't blame, if we commit a crime, we can't blame the judge for our sentence in prison. That's not the way it works. It's our fault in the end. And so what Lord Krishna is giving us. Look, here's your formula for becoming free from this prison. So here's what you should do. And so it's simply right now, what Krishna has explained is to do with the various modes, and that goodness is the best. And so from verses 14 to 18, he describes the effect of these modes. So the full description of these, the summary of this is given in verse 17 and 18. So we'll just go to that. Sattvat sanjayate jnanam rajaso lobha evacha pramada moha tamaso bhavato jnanam evacha. From the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. From the mode of passion, greed develops. And from ignorance develops foolishness, madness, and illusion. So we can assess ourselves, where we are at, what mode are we in. We can look in our own life and go, okay, at this point, I'm doing like this, that means I'm in goodness. At this point, I'm doing like this, that means I'm definitely clearly in passion. I'm working really hard at that time. I'm a little bit not satisfied, but I keep on working anyway. And ignorance, I'm completely mad, lazy, tired, completely bewildered. Then that's, we can analyze and reflect on various situations in our own life. But the important thing that's clearly mentioned in these few verses, the importance of the mode of goodness in its own nature, and that at least society should come to the level of goodness, because even though it's not spiritual, it in itself will lead you to spirituality. So the thing about goodness is that when you come onto that stage, it acts as like a runway. The airplane goes on a runway before it goes to fly. So it acts as that little springboard, the little basis from where we can then blossom in our devotional service. And so, especially the things that people are doing nowadays, where it be systematically setting up slaughterhouses. The whole purpose of that industry is systematically to kill other animals for our own pleasure, and things like that we are doing these days. So this is not the mode of goodness. So then it's so necessary that we can try and get the mode of goodness in our day-to-day, especially in our present society, because a lot of the problems come by simply not being situated in at least the mode of goodness. And so it's really important that we should try and avoid the passion and ignorance, and where those desires come, we should try and come to the mode of goodness. Now, how we can come to that, one of the best ways come from going from passion and ignorance, where there's loads of desires or there's just loads of illusion, to goodness is by Krishna consciousness. I'm just going to read a little bit from the purple then. If one hears about Krishna or God, then gradually he becomes freed from the clutches of darkness and passion, and he comes to the platform of goodness. And when he's perfectly in goodness, then this passion and ignorance by their products cannot touch him. Tada rajastamo bhava kamalobha dayaschaya. And if we hear Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita regularly, then we become free from the effects of the mode of ignorance, passion, and gradually through time. But it's sure. The more you hear about Krishna, Krishna means his instruction about him, the more you become purified. One purified from base qualities of passion and ignorance is no more attacked by greediness and passion. When he's no more perturbed by the base qualities, then he's happy. So that's from a little discussion between Srila Prabhupada and Hayagriva on Socrates, the Greek philosopher. And it's very important that we at least understand that we come to that mode, because at least then we can become knowledgeable. And from that knowledge, then you can go on beyond that as well. Now, where do those people who are in various modes, where do they go? Urdvam gachanti sattvasta madhye tishtanti rajasa jaganya guna vrittista adho gachanti tamasa. The difference between gachanti and tishtanti are very important in this verse. Gachanti means to go, and tishtanti means to stay. And so basically, those who are in the mode of goodness, they will go upwards to the higher planets. Those who are in the mode of ignorance, they will go downwards to the lower planets. And those who are in the middle, those who are in the mode of passion, they stay in the middle planets, leave on the earthly planets, not just Earth, the various other earthly planets in Bhumandala, in Jambudvipa, and in other Plakshadvipas, etc., etc. All the middle planetary systems where the passion and the work is promoted. And so those are the different places where these people go. So it's very simple. If anyone wants to memorize, please memorize verse 17 and 18 as well. And it's so important that wherever we can, we should try and get this goodness in society, because at least in ourselves first, before we can change it. Because a change on the small scale leads to change on the larger scale. I had this book called The 6 Minute, and I still do, The 6 Minute Diary. And it talks a lot about goodness. That doesn't refer to the word goodness itself, the necessity for goodness in order to see a massive change in ourselves. And a lot of the miseries which affect us now won't affect us in goodness. Definitely won't affect us beyond goodness. So it's very simple miseries that affect us now. Okay, so very simply put, goodness is where you start off with misery and it leads to happiness. And a good example of this is waking up in the morning early. Wake up in the morning early. When you're in the bed, anyone that's gone Mangalati knows the feeling. You're in the bed. It's so hard to get out at 4:30 a.m. to go to Mangalati. It takes you a while, and you're sort of there, a little bit lethargic, a little bit tired, eyes half open. And it's very, very difficult. But when you get out of the bed and get in the shower, everyone agrees. Once you're in the shower, it's perfectly fine. You're able to do it. But starting that journey, just starting that, it's like it's a very small journey between the bed and the shower, but it takes forever, almost. You have to put your mind to it a little bit. But that misery leads to happiness in the end. Then with mode of passion, happiness at the start and misery at the end. My mom gave me an example. I don't know what the certain spicy food stuffs that we like to eat. We eat them a lot and we feel so happy when we're eating them, actually. But what happens is when we have excessive consumption, and it leads to what you call stomach ulcers and acidity in the stomach. And it causes various problems there. And so originally, although it might have been happy, we might have been so happy eating them, it's led to misery in the long term. So that's the nature of the mode of passion. And mode of ignorance is simply illusion in the beginning, illusion in the end. A good example is drinking alcohol, for example. You drink, you're deluded when you're drinking it, and then what's your outcome? You're still deluded then as well. And that leads you maybe even on to further drinking. So it's a very dangerous cycle. Yeah, all these negative things, drugs, alcohol, smoking, and things like that. These are all coming in the mode of ignorance. So the illusion in the beginning, illusion in the end. Okay, and then now, final section, transcending the modes. Now, firstly, very practically when we're speaking, we need to try and at least cultivate mode of goodness where we can. So that's first in our environment, right? So things like the cleanliness, organized, using time well, avoiding distractions, not checking the phones, the WhatsApps, the social medias too much, not getting distracted on the YouTube and things like that. That's the very practical thing we can do in our environment, but also then in our consciousness. If we really want to see a change, we can't do it by our own endeavor because we're not that strong generally. So what we need is the association of devotee. I was actually in a group yesterday where we were talking about how the practicality of coming to this sukha dukkhe same kritva labha labha jaya jaya, seems the happiness and distress equally, with an equal vision, because it's very easy to say, and it's one of the things that we'll see again in this chapter. But it's a little bit harder to do. We were talking about the importance of actually developing, nurturing devotional relationships with other devotees, and that can help us as a fail-safe if we are affected by various miseries. They can help us, they can guide us, etc., and they can listen to the problems and correct. And so practically speaking, if you want to see a change in your environment, the environment to become goodness, you actually have to see a change in the heart. There's a description that Ranath Maharaj once said that a lady came up to him and said, "Oh, you Babajis, you Swamis, all you guys do is talk about God and stuff. Actually, what we need to do, we need to clean the rivers, The rivers are polluted. We need to stop the deforestation. And that's when Radha Maharaj said, yes, this is true. But the problem is, we can do all of this, right? We can clean our rivers, we can take care of the environment. But if our heart is polluted, then in another 50 years' time, people will use fossil fuels again because it's easy, cheap, reliable. They don't care about environment. So what we have to do actually is we have to change the inside. The change must come from within to then see that without. If I make a change in myself, then I'm able to change the way I interact with other people. Otherwise, it's a little bit harder. And so that really comes from the association of the devotees.
The inside is clean.
When the inside is clean, then the outside can easily be cleansed. How do we clean the inside? That outside, how we clean the dirt. What do we do to clean the dirt? We shower. We put the soap and we rub it off and get rid of all this sweat and all the dirt that's accumulated on the body. So simply to clean the inside, our heart, our consciousness, our mind, which is so polluted by material nature. Sakrit Gitamrita Snanam, by taking the nectar of the Bhagavad Gita and implementing it, hearing it, drinking it, practicing it, then we're able to change the inside as well. Okay, now we're going to talk about transcending goodness as well. Goodness is really important. So practically speaking, at least whatever you're doing, when those desires come, try and stop those desires and engage yourself in devotional service. Because although we can do to a certain extent our environment to goodness, it has to be bhakti. It has to be devotional service that takes you to goodness in the end. So whether you're going, there's actually a nice verse which we can get onto in the end. Whatever we're doing, if we do devotional service, it will allow us to progress. Okay, now the final section, Transcending the Modes, verses 19 to 27. 19. When one probably sees that in all activities, no other performer is at work than these three modes, he knows the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental to these three modes. To these modes, he attains my spiritual nature. And so the Lord is clearly emphasized that he is beyond the modes. He is not affected by the modes of nature. That these sometimes I heard a politician actually said that Ram chased after the deer. Why? Because affected by lust, and he wanted to get the deer for Sita. So this is not the correct understanding. This is they're manipulating their own mind, manipulating with their own mind so that they can understand. The Lord is inconceivable by nature, and we try to conceive him and cause all these problems. Well, the Lord said he's clearly transcendental to the modes. Just because he's transcendental to the modes does not mean he's there in the material world. Ishmadev says, you create the material world, but then you come inside it. And so, Lord, when Krishna is speaking, he's here on the material world, but he's not affected by the modes of nature, although he's inside the material world. Such is the nature of the Supreme Lord. So, that's first thing. The second thing is observing how we are effective and then implementing methods by which we can move forward. And so we can see, okay, here I'm clearly affected with this problem of ignorance. Here's what I can do, here's a good method, and here's a good way I can get out of it. We can start very practically implementing methods. Oh, I'm getting distracted by my phone too much. Okay, here's what I should do. I should put it in another room, or I should do this, or I should remove this app, or whatever. Like that, we should make methods. But the ultimate method is devotional service. And the other thing I thought I was going to mention, Krishna consciousness is Krishna is transcendental to the modes, and so we should take to what Lord Krishna says to also transcend from these modes and achieve the Lord's spiritual nature. And the embodied being is able to transcend these modes associated with the material body. He can become free from birth, death, old age, disease, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar, even in this life. And so it's there that liberation often is seen as getting rid of this body, moving beyond the body. Actually, utilizing the field of activity of the body, we can go beyond the body. So we can become liberated even itself in the body, as well as being liberated outside of the body. It's a little bit of a more difficult concept. The devotee, one who's engaged in Krishna consciousness, he's transcendental to the modes of nature. Because although he's in the body, he's utilizing the body. Now, there was something I heard today was from Dayanand Maharaj was, what is spiritual, what is material? What is spiritual and what is material? Whatever is used in the service of the Lord, that is spiritual. Wherever is not used in the service of the Lord, that is material. It's very simple. It's not that there's a verse, anasaktasya vishayanyatarham upayanjata, nirbande krishna sambande yuktam vairagyam uchyate. Prapanchikataya buddhya hari sambandhi vastuna, mumukshubi parityago vairagyam falgu kathite. The real detachment is not by renouncing what we are doing, but it's rather engaging them in the service of the Lord. And just by renouncing, but not Hari Sambandhi Vastuna, by not connecting this with the Lord, and this is Falgu Vairagya. This is not real Vairagya. This is fake detachment. The Yukta Vairagyam, the true detachment, is when we actually engage in our resources, our whatever we have in the service of the Lord, our employing everything that we have in the service of the Lord, our talents, our house, our wealth, everything. It's not that you give up now. Now that you know the goodness is there, now I don't have to work. Now the people in goodness, they still work, but they're already satisfied even though they work. That's what it is. And so they can enjoy nectar even in this life. What does it say? Dehi deha samudbhavan. Even though he's in the body, he can go beyond it. This is the nature of the liberated soul. Okay, then Arjun asks, like a good student asks, when someone doesn't understand, I'm always telling my sister this. When you don't understand something in maths, ask me. Just ask me. I can explain it to you. It's fine. Just ask me. What a good student does is whenever the teacher is teaching, they should always ask questions. So Arjun asked 3 questions here because then now something is a little confusing to him. And so he asked 3 questions. Well, first question he asks, I'll read the verse. The verse is nice. I'll read the verse and then we'll read the translation. Arjuna uvacha kairlingay stringuna netan atito bhavati prabho kimacharah katam shaitams trigunanati vartate. Arjuna inquired, O my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known to the one known who is transcendental to these 3 modes? What is his behavior and how does he transcend the 3 modes of nature? So Arjuna has asked the question, and then Krishna will respond. Well, the question is threefold. First thing, symptoms. Second thing, behavior. And the third thing is the process. The symptom of one who's beyond the 3 modes, the behavior of someone who's beyond the 3 modes, and the process by which one can become above the 3 modes. And so, great student Arjun, he's now asked the question. And Krishna, being the perfect teacher, the most transcendental teacher, the best guru in this regard, he's now going to answer it. And he answers in verses 22 onwards. So verse 22, he actually answers the first bit of the question, which is, what are the symptoms of the person like this? Prakasham cha pravrittim cha mohameva cha pandava nadveshti sampravrittani nanivrittani kankshati. That who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion, or long for them when they disappear. So when there's illumination, attachment, and delusion, this person who is transcended, who's indifferent to the modes, he doesn't long for them, he doesn't desire them, neither does he hate them when they're there. He's indifferent to them, it doesn't matter. So that's the overall idea, that he's undisturbed through these modes. And they don't long for them when they disappear. So this is the indifference that's there, in a sense, quite neutral. And then in the verses 23 to 25, the Lord asks the second bit of the question. Now, what's the behavior? And you will see these qualities are now consistently coming up repeatedly. We saw them in the end of the 12th chapter. We're seeing them in the middle bit of the 13th chapter. And we're seeing the same qualities, behavior of someone who's trying to take the process. What is it like? Udasina vadasina. Udasina means neutral. He's unaffected. Gunay yona vichalyate guna vartanta ityevam yovatishtadi nengate. Samadukka sukha swasta, someone who's equal in happiness and misery. Samaloshtashma kanchana, the one who sees rocks, stones, and rocks, pebbles, and gold as equal. Tulya priya priyodhiras, tulya nindatma samstati. So who sees those equally. So those who are dear as friends and those who are not dear, or those are enemies as well, he sees them equally. And various other qualities are mentioned like this, and these I'm just going to go through some of them now. Firmly situated in the self, swasta. Swasta means he's self-situated. So it's important. We often talk about the if factor. If factor, which is very important. If I have this, I'll be happy. If I have that, I'll be happy. If I have this and this and this, then I'll be happy. But we keep on postponing our happiness so far that we end up not being able to appreciate the moment in itself. So swasta, this person, he's already self-situated. He's atma rama. He's stita prajna. All these things that we've said many times. This is what he is, one of the qualities. Dhira means he's steady. He's not greatly affected. He's very steady in his process. Any other things that sarvaramba parityagi, he renounces all material activities. He doesn't renounce spiritual activities, but he renounces all material activities. The real person who takes up. The one who may take this process, they may originally renounce material activities, but it becomes very clear that that's quite impractical, because it's the instead of then transcending the modes, you become affected by the modes because you can't control the mind. And so instead it's renouncing all of these material activities. Gunatita uchate. Gunatita is someone who's transcendental to the modes of material nature. And so symptoms, indifference mainly in various manners, illumination, delusion, and attachment, they are indifferent to them. Behavior, the qualities that we've mentioned so far, equality, oneness of vision, oneness of perspective. They are always kind to all. They treat the friend and tulyo mitra ripakshayo. They treat the mitra, the friend, and the ari, the enemy, equally. And so it's those very, very general, the same principles that are coming over and over again. So we need to see, because the Bhagavad Gita is mentioned over and over again, that means it's very important that we cultivate these qualities and try and develop them in our life. And to the extent that we develop them, to that extent we are applying in our life. So this is how we are able to transcend the body. And in the final two verses, the penultimate verse, Lord gives the process. Very important verse 26, please note down. Manchayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of nature and comes to the level of Brahman. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. First thing, manchayo vyabhicharena. Avyabhicharena means without fail. Without fail, one unfailing in all circumstances. Bhakti yogena sevate, by doing bhakti yoga, by doing the loving devotional service. Sagunan samatityetan, sagunan, the modes of material nature, samatityetan, they are transcending, they go beyond it. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate, and they come to the Brahman level of understanding. And so the process actually by which we can develop the qualities fully, by which we can fully understand the modes of nature, by which we can fully transcend the mode of nature, is the same process by which we can come to the mode of goodness, which is also bhakti. So by doing bhakti or devotional service, we go from ignorance and passion to goodness. Very important, we should try and cultivate that goodness environment, that goodness attitude in ourselves and in our environment. And from goodness as well, if we want to go beyond it, it's also bhakti. So we come to the level of Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. Then we come beyond the level. We're not material. We come to spirituality, the transcendental. You understand the level of Brahman. You see the impersonal aspect of the Lord everywhere around you. You can recognize that. And that's a very beautiful process. And then also to see, like, it's very, actually one thing that's easy. It's easy to see, compared anyway, easy to see gold and stone as equal compared to seeing a friend and enemy. When you're seeing friend and enemy as equal, that's a very high stage of realization. And so that's the sort of stage that you come to by doing devotional service. So if you want to make that, implement that, you do devotional service. The best way to stay unflinching in all circumstances is by surrounding yourself with devotees, and so that they can nurture that devotion, which is already dormant in the heart. They can just activate it. Sometimes the car has everything it needs to drive, right? Car has everything it needs to drive, but sometimes you need to jumpstart it because the car's not working. So it's the same thing there. Sometimes you need a little bit of devotees to come and push you, go, hey, come on, don't do that, do this. It's just a little push, and then it will help you. The ultimate principle is remembering the Lord in all circumstances. And so that's how we can unfail in all circumstances, unfailing in all circumstances. And how we can remember the Lord is by the devotees. Actually, that is the ultimate principle of all Vedic practice. Smartavya satatam vishnor, vishmartavyo na jhatujit. That remembering Lord in every circumstance and not forgetting the Lord in every circumstance. It's given both prohibition and injunction. They're both given at the same time. It's the same point, but emphasized twice. Always remember Lord Krishna, never forget Lord Krishna. Always remember the Lord, never forget him. Because when we do that and we cultivate that in us, then we end up becoming more and more spiritual, and we see a more and more change in the heart. The story of wait, which story? Radha, do you want to tell a story related to that verse? I can't remember which story now, but this is the overall. Oh yeah. There's a story given in the Padma Purana. Actually, Lord Shiva says this verse. Lord Shiva is one of the dearest people for us in our devotional service. He carries out so many things. Actually, speaking of modes, Lord Shiva is a little bit deeper thing. This is not in the Bhagavad Gita right now. But we come to the understanding actually that Lord Shiva he's predominating the mode of ignorance. That's his main thing. All the demons, he has skulls and everything because he wants to attract people in the mode of ignorance to serve him. But for the devotee, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described Tamo bhidete jagata shivaya. By he removes the ignorance for the devotee and makes the devotee's life auspicious. And so actually we'll come to that. But one of the best ways to engage in devotional service, as we said, is by associating with devotees and serving the devotees. By serving the devotees of the Lord, by spending time with the devotees, by associating with the devotees, we can really, that's like getting a high-speed railway. It's so fast. It quickly sees the change in your heart. Anyway, I'll stick to this theme now. And so you come to the level of Brahman. And then that's not the end of the chapter. The chapter goes on. The final verse, Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyayasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya sukasya ikantikasya cha. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. I'm the basis of that. It rests upon me. Which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal. Amritasya avyayasya shashvatasya. Amritasya, immortal, avyayasya, imperishable, inexhaustible, and shashvatasya, eternal. It's on the constitutional position of unlimited happiness. It's described very simply. Imagine light. The sun is like the concentrated origin of all light. It's like if you get in concentrated, it's the supreme light in that sense for us on earth. And so in the same way, if you think of Brahman, then you think that there is a localized Paramatma in the heart, which is beyond that Brahman. It's not just impersonal, but there's also a different, deeper level of understanding. But you concentrate that and you take Parabrahma, which is Lord Krishna, the supreme Brahman, the source of the Brahman. It's actually described the Brahma Jyotis, the light emanating from the toenails of the Lord. And so the spiritual understanding then starts from this stage. You do bhakti to come to this stage, and then there's like almost like spiritual modes of understanding. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti Shadyate. So this Brahma Bhuta stage you come to, and then by devotional service, we can go from just recognizing, but then we also recognize the Paramatma in everyone's heart, as we described the whole of last chapter. You realize the Paramatma is there in everyone's heart. And then along with understanding the Paramatma is there, then you understand the Lord is there in full opulences, 6 opulences. Not just there is he with opulences, but he's even sweeter than he is opulent. And not only is he sweeter than he is opulent, but his devotees are even sweeter. And that process of devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, what that means actually is that you get to Brahman stage, Brahma Bhuta stage. And then Brahma Bhuta prasannatmana shoshati na kankshati. You have no worries, you have no lamentation, no misery. Samas sarveshu bhuteshu, still see all living entities as equal. Mad bhaktir labhate param. Then you get pure devotional service. And then when you get to that stage, when you go to Vaikuntha, you go to Goloka Vrindavan, is that it? Is that the be all and end all? No, even there you carry out devotional service. Such as devotional service. It's the means and the goal. And it's so sweet. That's the thing that devotion has, which other processes don't have, is how sweet it is, because the Lord's reciprocal nature. The devotee does something that when you take one step to Lord, Krishna takes 1,000 steps back to you. And so this whole chapter goes through various modes of nature. And the most practical thing we should do now that we've got all of this is now, how do we apply this in our life? What does it mean to me? We should come to the stage of goodness. And then with that, we can act as like a runway, as a springboard, as a basis to go beyond goodness. And then any transcendentalist, impersonal, personal, or localized, like the Paramatma stage, any of these, they're all beyond the modes of nature. They're all beyond. These Kumaras are a great example. The Kumaras, they were so attached to the impersonal stage originally. But when they smelt the tulsi on the lotus feet of the Lord, they ended up taking shelter of the Lord himself. The same way we have the example of Shukadev Goswami. Originally, Shukadev Goswami, he was very Atmarama, self-situated, perfectly happy. But what did he do in the end? He heard the verse which glorifies how beautiful the Lord is in the pastimes in Vrindavan. Barhapidam Natavaravapu. And then along with that, he not only how beautiful the Lord is, how merciful the Lord is. That someone came to kill him, and he gave her mercy. And by hearing these verses, also his heart becomes changed. So bhakti, it's actually the only, like one of the best ways. And there's a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam which summarizes this. Akamaha sarva kamova moksha kam udharati. What's the ending? Tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham padam. That it doesn't matter where you are. Akamaha, you don't have any desires. Sarva kamova, you have all desires. Moksha kama, you only desire liberation. It doesn't matter where you are. What is the importance? Bhakti yogena. By carrying out devotional service, then you're able to make a progress wherever you are, whatever stage you are. So, summary. Come to mode of goodness, and then we can springboard. Best way to do that is by changing the inside and the outside, and best way to change the inside is by spending time with the devotees and developing loving relations with devotees. Along with that, in devotional service, there are various processes, and right now, a lot of them we can do. Later on in the age of Kali Yuga, so many things will happen. Temples won't be a thing. In several hundred years' time, it will become almost impossible for temples to exist. Devotees may not even be there around us. It might become illegal or something like that. It'll become very difficult. But one thing will remain till the end of Kali Yuga. Harinam eva kevalam. Kalir dhoshani de rajan hastiya ko mahanguna kirtana deva krishnasya mukta sangha paramprajit. But this chanting will always remain. So we can at least let the Lord dance on our tongue. When we meditate, then we can connect ourselves to the Lord through yoga, bhakti yoga, and we can do the chanting. Really important. With chanting and singing. Music is one great way to express emotion as well. And so we're going to do a little bit of kirtan now until 5 o'clock. Quick summary. Conditioning nature of material world through the three modes. The goodness is conditioning. It conditions us by happiness. The passion conditions us by making us want to work. And the ignorance conditions us by various illusions, madnesses, and laziness. Then we looked at where those people with various modes, how they act and what they do. Those in the mode of goodness, they when goodness increases, you are illuminated by knowledge and happiness. When passion increases, you're more greedy, you want to do more fruitive activity. There's more endeavor, there's more desire. There's not as much happiness, we keep on postponing it. And when ignorance is just darkness, madness, illusion. And then finally, where you go with those stages, with the goodness, you rise. With the passion, you stay in the middle. And then with the ignorance, that you fall down to lower stages, lower species of life, and have to take lower birth in like the animal kingdom and things like that. And then finally, then transcending the modes, that's done easily by devotional service. It sees the change in the heart. It sees the change in the qualities of the person. And it's very, very easy to do, especially in this age, because it's been done by Harinam and also by devotee association. So we develop the knowledge through the devotees. The devotees, they'll tell us to chant, and the chanting will help us associate further with the devotees. So let's do a little bit of kirtan now. This is the ultimate goal of that. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama. Radha Parmeshwar Shri Radhe, Jaya Radha Parmeshwar, Radha Parmeshwar Shri Radhe, Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman, Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman, Ram Lakshman Hanuman, Jaya Sita Ram, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Yajna ki Jai, Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you all for attending today's Bhagavad Gita chapter 14 session. Please engage in devotional service. That's the ultimate aim. Try and stay in the mode of goodness where possible. Use that as a springboard to go beyond. We'll see you. I didn't check the calendar. I'll check now. We'll see you on the first Sunday of July, which is the 4th of July. Sadhana will be served at your own time. Hare Krishna.